Absolutely, Prime Minister thrives on that. In fact, I asked him how does he select people. I have written about it. He says only 3 qualities he looks for. First thing is absolute highest levels of integrity. Second, he says maine hum bhav hona chahiye. It's all about collaborativeness. Sahridayata should lead to
collective
effort. It's not about me, it's about all of us together. Third, he says you should not be technology averse. You should be technology savvy on the other hand. You should know how to deal with it. But Narendra Modi is the example that anything is possible if I cultivate these qualities and try to live those qualities.
How would you really look at the current scenario and then taking all your, I would say, inner strength to really exemplify what public leadership would be all about?
The first thing is we got to be insulated from the noise outside and stay focused on the work at the center. Public service is life-giving. Life-giving not only to the people that you're serving but to yourself. It's not about the small petty things that you can say. Today we are hearing these examples of I want a car, I want lights, I want an office.
The material.
It's not those things. It's about an opportunity to serve. It's not about yourself but the privilege that you've been granted to serve your citizens.
Namaskar and welcome to IIPA. We are bringing to you a very special show called Stalwarts Speak. In this program, we highlight all the important issues which are around us. And of course, we talk to some of the bright minds, the thought leaders, very senior experts who share their insights and their views with us on this program. I am Rakhee Bakshee and today I am privileged to announce that we have a brilliant personality here with us. His name is Dr R Balasubramaniam and he is currently the member HR of Capacity Building Commission. Somebody who works passionately on areas of development and governance. We are going to talk to him about a very interesting book which is also a bestseller which is just authored. And let me introduce you the book which is called Power Within, the Leadership Legacy of Narendra Modi. And here is the book. So we are going to talk about this book, also about public administration, also about governance and so many areas around it all. So we are going to go and talk to him about this very engaging and compelling book and all around it. So welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on this show.
Talking about the book, why the idea? How did it originate, first of all?
Again, you were explaining about development governance, and my early part of my life as a physician was in the tribal areas of Karnataka. So I went in there as a young doctor at 22, thinking that I can change this world, and quickly realized that tribal communities living in the forest, their understanding of life, understanding of how they live for generations was not really appreciated by the state, or if you can call it the government, whether it's a local government or the national government then. I'm talking about 40 years ago. It's a long time from then. So I was actually constantly irked by the insensitivity of the state towards issues of indigenous communities. And I was a very confrontational activist. So I would always have my satyagrahas on the street and trying to raise the awareness of what tribals are going through. And that anger manifested in several books earlier in my life, like I the Citizen or Voices from the Grassroots. And I was trying to communicate to government that your policies are not really enabling people. Your policies are actually sometimes creating poverty, and then you have a poverty elevation program. But I found these voices were not heard. And then I started thinking, if the policy is messed up, how messed up must be the policy maker behind making this policy? Is he even having the sensitivity, the compassion, the empathy, and the appreciation of what public systems are before he even designs these policies? So it was like, in Kannada we have the word called Halli for a village. We say if people from the Halli go to Delhi, they can possibly be sensitive. But from Delhi they look at Hallis, they can never understand what life is all about. And so in this anger and I would say discomfort about what is around me, I thought maybe acquiring more college degrees will help. So I went on, acquired degrees in public health, I did an MPhil in management, then I went to Harvard, to the Kennedy School to say that maybe I'll understand how public policy is made, did fellowships in leadership. But during this entire journey, I started appreciating that we are all deeply influenced by Western narratives, whether it's public policy, public administration, appreciation of governance, development. We all simply get shaped by what the Westerners are comfortable with. So I used to talk to my guru, he's no longer alive today, and he was telling me that I don't know much about all these things, but I've heard about a chief minister in Gujarat. You can compare his life to all this, and if you think there's something you can discover, possibly that's something you should do. But I thought he's somewhere so far away, I'm in a forest in Mysore, how am I going to even reach him? And so I just let it go, and I wrote another book called Leadership Lessons for Daily Living, where I articulated some of these concepts. But 3 years ago, appointed to the Capacity Building Commission, this commission reports to the Prime Minister's HR Council, and therefore it gave me access. I started interacting with people who work very closely with him, who work very long time with him. And when I started understanding his leadership, I thought this is a story to be told. This is a flesh and blood example of what these concepts are talking about. And so I can actually explain to people and say, here is somebody who's living it.
No, and how beautifully you have actually put it all across, and very engaging, as I said, very insightful. And as you were telling us right away, right now, is that the whole of our tradition, our ancient wisdom, to weave it all into his public leadership in the current stage. How did you actually navigated that kind of landscape?
It's difficult, but I when I decided I'm going to do this, I asked this permission whether I can write, and therefore I realized that today's world is so polarized. People have extreme views, and I know I could be easily dismissed off as a sycophant writing a hagiographic book. So being an academic, I knew that I had to bring in as much intellectual integrity and objectivity I could.
Which reflects truly.
In the book, yes.
Yes.
And then I thought I should include my research notes, but I need to do deep research. So my research on Indic scriptural knowledge is close 13 to 15 years, but research into Prime Minister's 50 years of public life. I started looking at his life from 17th year. I had numerous conversations with him. I had conversations with all these people closely associated over the last 50 years and gathered as much as information as I could, then validated it, triangulated it, made sure that these are very as close to reality as possible, the fact I could pick up, and then started connecting the dots to the knowledge that I had gained by researching into scriptural wisdom and civilizational knowledge. And I thought it needs to be told in a way in which it will be useful. So this book is not just a leadership book for public leaders. This is not a book for just political leaders of today's world, but it's a corporate leader could as much benefit.
Exactly.
A farmer could benefit.
There are management mantras, so to say,
Exactly.
and you've taken some of this wisdom from our ancient scriptures. So you
all of the wisdom.
You're referring to Mahabharata, to people
Ramayan
like Vivekananda, for example, you keep referring to a lot. So there is this whole spiritual side to this kind of leadership that not many of us really know also about. You bringing that on the forefront.
I think yes, because in Indian leadership, I write in the preface too. Why another book? Thousands of books are there in leadership. There are hundreds of books on the Prime Minister. How does this book make it different? What's the difference? A lot of my friends also ask me, how different is it from my earlier book, or how is this going to be special in the leadership literature? See, the Western narrative of leadership is something we have to appreciate. Western narrative leadership is not about leadership. It's mostly about being a leader. And if you have no followers, you have no identity as a leader. So it's only about a leader and what he does. It's about I influencing people who are following me to get to do what I want them to do. But India is not like that. Indian scriptural knowledge says it's not about being a leader, it's about exercising leadership. And in a Western world, it's about external control. If I am the head of my office, I have to be controlling the entire office. I'm authority in position to control. Whereas Indianness is not about control, it's about jumping deep inside and looking within ourselves. And to give an example, I was looking at the Mahabharata. And even in the Mahabharata, the war is over. Bhishma is lying on his deathbed, and Yudhishthira goes to Bhishma and he says, the war is done, and now please guide me and how I should rule the kingdom so that these kind of things don't recur. And Yudhishthira is explained to by Bhishma about Rajadharma and what are the qualities, and he gives 10 tenets. Now you can say it's one epic of India, but if you look at the other epic, Ramayana, it's very, very similar. Rama has gone into exile. Bharata follows him, goes to him and says, I can't rule the kingdom. I was not trained to rule. I was not coronated. You were coronated as a king. You were trained. You were prepared for this responsibility. I am just the youngest prince. I am not prepared for all this. I can take your Paduka to represent you, but please tell me, how can I live up to the ideals that you had in mind when you have to be the ruler? So what should I do that's appropriate in the sense of my role as a ruler? And Rama explains to him so beautifully. It's possibly a treatise on public governance and administration. But if you look at Arthashastra, now Kautilya is a no-nonsense person. He's direct, he's straight, he distills out and says things as they should be told.
But the nuggets that he presents,
it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
He simply says the only responsibility of a ruler is two things. He says Lokasangraha and Yogakshema. The societal welfare on one side and public welfare, public good. But at the same time, he says ensuring that your securities as a citizens are taken care of and you enable acquisition of more securities for the citizen. And for this, he says, you need Rajadharma, and only a ruler, the Raja, is very critical, he says. The ruler, in the context of today, the Prime Minister of the country. He says only a person who's developed deep control of the inside, who's Indriya Nigraha, Indriya Vijay, he should reach the state of Indriya Vijay, he should be completely a master of his senses. So that's when it came up very powerfully to me that the Western world sees power without, control outside, control of the external nature outside.
No, but here it's
Power within, right? Your Indriya Nigraha.
Yeah.
And when I was comparing these concepts to Prime Minister Modi and observing him closely in his role as a Prime Minister, I was saying that this man is actually on that journey of trying to be an Indriya Vijay.
So you have also tried to, really capture right from his childhood to the way he grows up, the kind of values he imbibes, and then practices it into daily wisdom, trying to reach out to common citizenry also. Would you describe that chain here?
Yeah. See, I think most of us think public leadership is about winning elections and occupying positions of power. We don't stop to ask ourselves, why are we there? That's just a means. The end is something else. And Warren Benn is the great leadership expert. And one other thing I do in this book is, while I try to present the enormous knowledge that is embedded in our scriptural wisdom, I don't try to discredit anything else. Western world has got its own research frameworks and it's also discovered leadership in its own way in the context in which they operate. I only say it's incomplete for today's existence and we need the Indian thinking to be Bharatiya Parampara Adharit jo hona chahiye. I try to bring it together here. And Warren Benn from the Western world talks about what is called a crucible movement. Some incident in your life which shapes the rest of your life. All of us have these experiences, but most of us just see them as one experience, one data point, and we don't pay attention.
That's transitional, that shifts you to another kind of role.
More importantly, a crucible moment is something which deeply scars you in a particularly positive way, and you start reflecting on it, you start thinking on it, and that shapes and guides your entire existence from then on. Prime Minister Modi as a young child had this crucible moment. I describe it in the book.
Yeah.
And there he starts thinking, in the incident I narrate is about an animal which dies grieving for the owner's
and how he
child.
feels empathy.
Yeah. And then he asks his father, why did the cow die? And the father says the cow must have been grieving for the child's death in the family, therefore the cow died. And then Prime Minister Modi starts as a child asking himself this question: if an animal can actually die as grieving for another human being suffering, how much more should I actually grieve when another human being suffers? Can I do something about that suffering? Can I remediate it? So the seva bhav that he talks about, which is a fundamental concept of public service, where it's not about private gain, it's about public good, it's about serving the other, which is a very strong pattern.
That's where the mission Karma Yogi is all about.
It's all about
from Karamachari to Karma Yogi. So you took that whole yogi part, your sadhak and sevak part also, which one watches in Prime Minister Narendra Modi. How would you really describe that sadhak and sevak part also?
See, the sadhak is one. We are all engaged in lifelong struggle to become better and better. Spirituality, the journey of spirituality is sadhana every day, every minute of our existence, a constant self-observation and self-evolution. And the statement that a very powerful Vedic statement which Swami Vivekananda actually gives it as the mandate of the Ramakrishna mission. He says, Atmano mokshartam jagat hitayacha. My Atma, I should strive for moksha. That is the very purpose of existence. But that should only be through the pursuit of jagat's hita. Vivekananda also says, sitting in the Himalayas and meditating, what use it for anybody except the man who is meditating? But the real work is about self-growth along with an external manifestation of self-growth through service of others. So private gain in a sense could be your evolution, but public good matters. He says, how can Bhagavad Gita be useful to a man who is starving? Right? You can't teach it on an empty stomach. So you need to take care of the person. So public leadership is an opportunity for us to express our inner spiritual evolution through external manifestation of serving the citizens. And that Prime Minister Modi exemplifies, and that's something special about him.
Yeah, I mean, through the chapters you really say so much, and in fact it's a guidebook, I must tell our viewers here. It's a complete guidebook on understanding what governance is all about and how a particular person, and in this case a very prominent leader, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, reflects all those contours. For example, right from his public diplomacy to communication skills to grassroots understanding of governance, talking to citizens. In fact, I refer to Man Ki Baat here. All these areas that he so smoothly actually walks on. How would you really look at that and trying to understand and put it out there?
See, I think it comes from experience and personal connectedness. As a RSS Pracharak, the entire organizational motive of RSS is to serve the country and to bring about using service as a full-time mission of the volunteers, the pracharaks. And having been that all his life, constantly looking at how do I serve, how do I seek opportunities to serve, he used to travel around, pracharaks travel around the country, right, wherever they are posted, their food is taken care of by communities and people, and they have no assets of their own, they are just constantly mobile, and you are always driven by societal concerns, and society has to take care of you. That's their motto. That's how they operate. And so I think 50 years of public life, the early part of his public life when he was a pracharak, traveling extensively around the country, entire India's what you call the appreciation of India and its entirety was a lived experience for him. Staying in those homes, staying in the homes of very poor people to rich people, to all kinds of exposure that he had, from technologists to pure scientists to thought leaders, common persons, all kinds of experiences, which is something extraordinary. And the way he connected to them. But more importantly, what I want to really mention is what you said, communication, right? A public leader's strength is communication. How well can you inspire a nation to move? Whether it is during COVID, people might actually talk about, what uses banging plates or lighting lamps. They're symbols. They're opportunities of mobilizing communities to become sensitive and aware that we have a serious problem. How do you get the entire nation to come together? So it's not a jovial way of talking about what we'll do, we'll fight the virus. It's about communities becoming aware and sensitive.
It's not the visual, the ethos actually.
Exactly, the thought process, the mindset, that shift he brought about. But he exemplifies the Indic model of Sadharanikaran in communication, where Sadharanikaran is not just talking. You and I talking is just communication, or trying to communicate information in a way there's very little loss of content. But in India, Sadharanikaran, Bharata in his Natya Shastra writes about so powerfully the rasa that comes out, or the bhava that he expresses. He talks about saha hridayata. Unless you and I are connected emotively at a very deep level, the oneness of existence, a real communication cannot exist. Now, Prime Minister Modi has a special quality where he can become one with you in that moment of time. And in that instant, that oneness breeds a complete appreciation of, there's no translation loss. Communication is complete. So, whether it is his Man Ki Baat, where his lived experience, his connectedness, his actual knowledge. So, he's not speaking from some theoretical frameworks that somebody writes the notes and gives. He's actually had these experiences. He's relating from his own personal experiences, and he gives about success stories. And if you look at Man Ki Baat, the entire communication is actually apolitical. It is national.
Exactly.
It is only about human positivity and development. It's all the goodness that human beings have to hear. In the noise of negativity,
collective efforts, small groups coming up with their
people who are not even seen and recognized, right? After they are exposed by the Prime Minister, look at how their lives get changed too. It's not just visibility at the very highest level, it's also that people get to know about a small product somewhere in Northeast, or some watershed management in rural Tamil Nadu, and he brings in every state. So it integrates the country, it gets you to appreciate the wealth of India, it gives civilizational pride, and it is positive. So I think this is what exemplifies his Sadharanikaran way of communicating to people.
So taking it to the contemporary world today and the governance as it is today, we are looking at the whole bureaucratic structure. You are deeply involved. How would you really say that this is, we were talking about emotive connect, how this book really becomes like a very, in a way, emotive connect also to understand how leadership should be navigated?
See, I think we all have to see Prime Minister Modi as an exemplar. As somebody in flesh and blood who could start off his life as a tea seller on a platform of a railway station to where he is today, negotiating all the barriers of politics and getting to the highest office of the land. It's a story of inspiration, it's a story of a reflection of his hard work, the discipline is practiced, so it's a model. So for us, it's not about Narendra Modi as a Prime Minister, but Narendra Modi is an example that anything is possible if I cultivate these qualities and try to live those qualities. Now for bureaucrats, if they can take his qualities of compassion, karuna, if they can take his qualities of systems thinking, if they can take his qualities of communicating, if they can understand how empathy is very critical and communicating empathy without humiliating or making somebody feel patronized, but somebody feel as a partner. His concept of Jan Bhagidari, where it's a very powerful public leadership concept. It only comes from a deep conviction. Now, if you look at the state, when we teach our children public policy, the next generation of students, one of the first things they learn is state is possibly one of the expressions of structured violence, and dominance over the citizen, right? But the whole idea of good governance is how do you keep mitigating this violence and making it better and better for citizens. But here is a Prime Minister who understands that state thrives only on asymmetry of information and power, wants to reduce it, and he says the only way to reduce it for the state to evolve into a partnership state. So his call is not for citizen-centric governance alone, it's a higher level than that. He says that you and I partner together.
You cited this from provider to partnership.
Yes,
You've told
our country's evolution is from a provider state to a provisioning state. Now it's a partnership state, which is a very high call, where he says Samaj, Sarkar, Bazaar has to come together. Team India has to work together to build the new India. He doesn't say government will build it. Government is a key facilitator. But a political executive, the chief executive of the country says, you know what, we all can come together, all of us are required, only then we can build a great country. The other big quality of public service, but which all of us can learn from, and we're talking about how even a civil servant should learn, is he's a lifelong learner. He doesn't pretend to be an expert. He doesn't say, I know everything. But you ask him, talk to him about quantum computing, you talk to him about blue economy or space economy, he's absorbed and soaked in so much knowledge that he'll know more than the person telling him that. How is it possible? Because he's constantly learning, and today's bureaucrats need that ability to constantly learn. Mission Karma Yogi is how to create that culture. It's not just a mindset shift from Karmachari to Karma Yogi, the Seva Bhav that they have to acquire, but it's also about lifelong learning and being ready for the future readiness. The other important quality...
Focus on technology, would you?
Absolutely. Prime Minister thrives on that. In fact, I asked him, how does he select people? I have written about it. How does he select people to work with him at the first circle of his people? He says there are only 3 qualities he looks for. One is his principal secretary narrates an incident and I write about it. The first thing is absolute highest levels of integrity. Right, and at his office just cannot be compromised with. Second, he says, "Maine hum bhav hona chahiye." It's all about collaborativeness. Saharidayata should lead to sahakaryata.
Collective effort.
Collective effort. It's not about me; it's about all of us together. Third, he says you should not be technology averse. You should be technology savvy. On the other hand, you should know how to deal with it. Today, you look at all programs of the government of India, even Mission Karma Yogi, the digital platform created and hosted on the Karma Yogi Bharat architecture. Is all about technology. We have built one of the world's largest, not just a learning management system, but it's actually a HR management system. So highest levels of technology is getting embedded in everything.
Or you refer to MyGov, for example.
MyGov or the entire digital stack of India, the India stack that we have, to the JAM Trinity, to Prime Minister speaking about the drone DDs. He said it's not just for government, right? It's even for the farmer on the land, and the self-help group member of lady member of the self-help group in agriculture space could also be using it.
Yeah, inclusion he has focused a lot on.
And he talks of the leadership, women-led leadership programs. Exactly. But the biggest quality, I think, in current world today is the ability to find that balance. The ecology and economy, both are important. In the G20 declaration, he talks about the 4 Ps. You need.
I was coming to that. Yeah, planet, people, peace, and prosperity.
You need the profits. You need prosperity. But then you can't say at cost of the ecology, right? You need to balance it out. And the other balance he does, he's finally, when he's fighting an election, he's a politician. Only after he wins it, he's a statesman or a prime minister, right?
You have said podium to people.
Yes. At the podium, he has to be short term in his thinking. Today's political economy is about winning elections also. At the same time, social safety net has to be taken care of, which he does very well. But he's never sacrificed long term thinking. In policy, we talk of short termism and long termism. He's found that balance. In scriptural wisdom, we talk about shreyas and prayas. The short term enjoyment that we can all have. I eat an ice cream, I feel nice. I watch a movie, I feel nice. It's all very short term. The extravagances, people, intelligence is all short term. But thinking of the long term is about attaining the oneness with God. In the policy context, it's about managing your short term requirements in policy. But he talks of Vikasit Bharat 25 years later.
Yeah.
25 years
as somebody would describe futuristic, very futuristic.
Absolutely, and strategic thinker. So he recently in a TV interview, he said the 4 S. So beautifully captured it. I would add a 5th S which he lives it. The first S he said was about define the scope of your work. If you say every Indian should have a bank account, it's a huge order, right? Then he said you have to then look at the scale. Scale has to be national. But the speed, you can't say bank accounts everybody will have after 20 years. You want it in 6 months, right? And that's how we drove it. And finally he said you have to set standards. You can't compromise. You can't give some mediocre quality, high quality of standards. But he can do this because he's got the 5th S in him, which is a systems thinker. He thinks in systems. Everything connected to something else. If he's talking of JAM, he's thinking of digital public infrastructure, he's thinking of formalizing the economy, he's thinking of eliminating black money, he's thinking of tracking transactions. So many things he's put into it. And I think many of us, we can't even figure out how deep he is. And as we start understanding it and unpacking him, all of us can learn a lot about his, how the way he connects the dots so beautifully.
In the some of the last chapters, you also talk about some other public leaders from other countries also, to kind of create a big horizon of what leadership today is all about, and how we are also learning from each other, the good practices, the best ones. How would you really look at the whole map of governance all around?
See, I think public leadership driving governance is always in context. Contexts have changed today. 30-40 years ago, nobody could have imagined that today's narratives is mostly fake story driven. We are seeing it around the country, the noise that we are hearing everywhere in the world, not just here. Everywhere in the world, people are getting nudged into believing things which are not true. We don't know what is fake, what is real. These kind of situations never existed. Technology is a great opportunity, it's also a challenge. So I talk of three leaders from the perspective how they changed the destiny of their countries or civilizations. If you look at Lee Kuan Yew, when Singapore got its freedom, it was absolutely, you can't even imagine what it is today and the journey it could take. People can criticize him and say he was very dictatorial, he was very strong, very stern, disciplinarian. It was required in that context. To build a great nation, he had to be that way, and he had to call a spade and drive his country to what it had to be. Today, Singapore can build on what legacy he left behind. But whether Lee Kuan Yew could do that today may not be possible. Today's contexts have changed. China, if you look at the civilization and wonderful bureaucracy they had, the Mandarin system, etc., but they had chosen a particular model of economic growth and development. Deng Xiaoping comes in and he shifts the entire trajectory, and he has a nice statement, though it looks like a very simple statement. He said, a cat by any color, black or white, I don't care, but as long as it catches a rat. So he said, I have to fight poverty, I have to get prosperity to my people, I don't care what you call it, but I'm going to get it done. He shifted the entire narrative of his country and civilization. Abraham Lincoln, much older in the American space, he shifted the narrative of equality, fraternity, and slavery being abolished, which is not easy. Prime Minister talks of Panch Pran. We have to decolonize, we have to grow, we have to make sure we're economically at the same speed that we're growing. We're one of the fastest growing economy in the world today. We have to sustain it, but we have to be a world caregiver. We have to be a world leader.
So I would like to talk to you about also the challenge. We are a diverse nation, and the challenge part also, which of course I think every day, every moment he's thinking about and working on it. How would you really look at the current scenario, and then taking all your I would say inner strength to really exemplify what public leadership would be all about?
The first thing is we got to be insulated from the noise outside and stay focused on the work at the center. I think for him it's Vikasit Bharat. A lot of things as much as his 78% popularity rating, we also hear all the high decibel shrieking noise about criticism, not getting affected. The Sthita Pragnate that he reflects, the Bhagavad Gita talks about Ekatvam and Samatvam, and that's an extraordinary quality. Connectedness to all the people, at the same time Samatvam, equipoise that he can maintain, and not getting distracted from what matters. And it's not about he getting seen to be doing all the work, it's about getting the work done. Bharat has to be Vikasit Bharat in 25 years, staying focused on the work at the center, transcending his the name and fame, and the Vivekananda talks of national ideals being Tyaga and Seva. Our cultural contradictions are not a problem. Our cultural contradictions are the strength of this country's diversity. So it's not just geographical diversity, linguistic diversity, food diversity. A simple example could be the G20. More than 200, 300 places where it got celebrated, where he got the world exposed to different parts of India, different languages, different cuisines, different arts.
Cultures.
So that's such an immense pride. And if you look at the simple things like the Tamil Kashi Sangam that the Tamilians come to Varanasi and celebrate, the national youth exchange program between states, when people go around the country and learn from each other. So there is sort of a thread of integration, because in a world which is getting fragmented with narrow ideologies and narrow beliefs, trying to get it together is not easy. But believing in it so strongly that I will persevere despite what people talk about, I think that is the inner strength, and that is the power within that I described.
So the students of public administration who would be watching, of course, this program with a lot of interest, I'm sure, what would you be your message also? I mean, somebody who's seen it all, through the book you have tried to, take out many good principles. How would you really describe the current scenario again?
I would simply say, don't discard the past. Look at what is great about it and see what you can use from that to build a great future. Start off with that. I would also get students to think about one powerful sentence that Swami Vivekananda writes. He actually writes this to the king of Mysore, the Maharaja of Mysore. He says, "Oh my dear prince, vanities of life are transient, but he alone lives who lives for others. The rest are more dead than alive. Public service is life-giving. Life-giving not only to the people that you're serving, but to yourself. It's not about, it's not about the small petty things that you can say. Today we are hearing these examples of I want a car, I want lights, I want an office.
The material
It's not those things. It's about an opportunity to serve. It's not about yourself, but the privilege that you've been granted to serve your citizens. I think these are extraordinary opportunities for many of us don't get it. If you have an opportunity to get into public administration, don't do it because of the stardom you'll acquire or this 2-minute public social media that you want to put up and say, I went and did something for a village, I gave water here. That's your damn job. And we are all working together to build a great nation. So my view is, it's not about the small, those things matter, but it should transcend your ego, transcend yourself and say, here is an opportunity for me to recognize myself by dissolving myself in the service of others. So every public service leader should live his life like the way Vivekananda wrote to the Maharaja, that if you're living it for yourself, you're more dead. But real life is when you live it for others.
Very true. And through this book, which is such a powerful book, as it is called, The Power Within, how much time did you get to talk to him also? I mean, what was the whole experience like of writing this book?
That and the book by itself, the conversations, the powerful messages I kept getting and the kind of learning I have had, you get inspired every time you meet him. There's so many things you want to imitate of him. The way he gives that 100% attention to you, whatever the context. You are nervous because he's the Prime Minister of the land, the most powerful man in the country, but you are always worried about you will do something wrong or say something wrong. But he makes you feel so comfortable. He makes you feel so calm, and that instant connect he can create. That is Sahridayata I spoke about. And then this tremendous energy he's got. You go meet him at any time of the day or evening, he's full of energy. The intent to give you 100% to yourself, living in the moment of here and now. You can go to him with any presentation. A lot of senior leaders have told me, you make any presentation to him, even if it's a pedantic, ordinary presentation, he'll never humiliate you and say it's trash. He will listen to you, he ask you deep questions, get deep into it, and by the end of the session, you yourself will believe that I could do better than this. So I think the way he respects you, the way he communicates that through his lived experiences, I think they're lessons for all of us. So for me, as a writer of this book, if I were to be honest and say that I learnt a lot, but how much of it I am able to live today, my aspirations to live all the 100% I discovered in writing this, but I may live, every time I have an opportunity, I try to say, can I do this? Can I imitate him?
No, I can say that your being an author here and writing about Prime Minister Modi is conveying a lot of messages to others for their advantage here, because you mix a lot of intellect, ancient wisdom to current leadership that Prime Minister Modi reflects in so many avatars and so much of layers within, as you have tried to unravel, and I think that becomes a very interesting experience for everyone to actually go with.
That's a different book by itself.
So I think anything else you would like to say?
I think it's a book on a deep discovery of Indianness, the Bharatiya tradition. It tries to bring in, it tries to use Prime Minister Modi as exemplar and understand and unpack his leadership style, not just from Indic knowledge, but also I use current leadership frameworks that the West is very comfortable with. It's a book for the whole world. It's a book, it's like you said, within a month it's become extremely popular, not just in India, outside India also, because everybody wants to study his life and understand it and live the leadership. What I believe is, if you truly want to make this world a better place, it's not about buying this book or reading this book. It's about learning the lessons and the message that this book is embedded with, that India's wisdom gives, and trying to live it. Every one of us has that hidden expression of leadership within us. Manifesting it and being useful to the rest of the world is the only way we can make this world a better place.
And how beautifully he simplifies some of the very complex things. I'm sure this is what you have also referred to in this book.
And I try to unpack it as simplistically as I can. But for us, it's not about reading about him and saying he's great and keep it there, but trying to say, can I get that inner power within me expressed in the service of others like he has done? If we can imitate him and emulate him, I think this world will truly be a better place.
Thank you so much for giving us this time and talking to us, not only to us, but through us, to a lot of other people who are going to watch this special show. It's been my privilege to talk to you here and also lay my hand on this wonderful book here. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this show. We also bring you some more people in future that we're trying to do. and keep watching our show. Do give us your feedback. Namaskar once again.